We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. And today I'm here because the universe just delivered a headline-worthy moment of poetic justice. Trump gets instant karma as Bluff is called on Epstein files. Donald Trump is panicking. Not oops, I misspoke, panicking, full-on, flailing, spinning, and scrambling because his favorite tactic just backfired. Bluff, loud, threaten louder, and hope nobody calls you on it. Well, somebody called it, in public, with cameras ready. Here's what set him off. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton basically said, "Oh, you want us to testify about the Epstein files? Fine. Let's do it. Let's do it publicly." And suddenly the spotlight turns. Because if you're going to drag people into the light, the obvious question becomes, hey, Donald, why don't you testify in public too? If you're so innocent, why hide? If you've got nothing to fear, why not say it under oath, live on TV, in front of the entire world? And that's where Trump's mask slips. He sits down for this exclusive NBC interview, and it goes off the rails in multiple directions at once. First, he tries a weird little pivot that almost sounds like he's auditioning for the role of Bill Clinton's biggest fan. I'm not kidding. Trump starts praising Bill Clinton, saying it bothers him that someone is going after Clinton. He says out loud, "I like Bill Clinton," and then goes even further. He claims Clinton got him, understood him, and treated him in a way Trump liked. That's not a slip, that's a tell. That's Trump openly revealing how he measures people, not by morality, not by truth, by whether they're useful to him, whether they flatter him, whether they make him feel safe. And then comes the question that makes him squirm. Democrats are saying if Clinton testifies, Trump should testify too. How does Trump respond? Like a man trying to wriggle out of a seatbelt while the car is still moving. He doesn't say, "Sure, I'll testify." He doesn't say, "Absolutely, put me under oath." He starts whining about how he's already been brought and indicted many, many times, trying to confuse legal accountability with public testimony. It's classic Trump drown the moment in grievance until the audience forgets what was asked. But the reason he can't answer cleanly is simple. The Epstein files are not going away, and the public release is only part of what exists. Multiple outlets have reported on a massive disclosure, millions of pages fueling renewed scrutiny, and political fallout both in the U.S. and internationally. And yes, let's talk about the viral line that's been detonating across the internet, that there are more references to Donald Trump in the Epstein files than there are references to Harry Potter in all 7 Harry Potter books. It sounds absurd until you see what's being reported. At least one report citing a New York Times review says Trump's name appears more than 38,000 times in the newly released batch. Now, mention counts alone don't prove wrongdoing. They don't. But they do prove something else. The man can't pretend he's some distant stranger to the Epstein universe. He's in the orbit over and over and over again. And while Trump is sweating, the MAGA machine tries to play defense. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson gets asked point blank whether Trump should have to testify under oath if he's named so many times. And Johnson does what the whole movement does when confronted with accountability. He tries to escape the question like it's a burning building. The president submits to press inquiries every day. He says like chatting with friendly media is the same as sworn testimony. Not under oath, the reporter pushes. Exactly, not under oath. And that's the entire point. Now that same NBC interview, it wasn't only disastrous on Epstein, it was disastrous everywhere. Trump gets asked about ICE and Border Patrol operations specifically. The public outcry after 2 U.S. citizens were killed during enforcement actions in Minneapolis, a controversy widely reported in recent days. And what is Trump's big concern? Does he sound like a leader grieving dead Americans? Number. He sounds like a guy mad his ratings dipped. He frames it like 2 people out of tens of thousands, and then complains about bad publicity. Bad publicity. 2 people are dead, and he's annoyed he's getting bad press. That is not leadership. That is rot. Then he does that other thing he always does. He brags. He says he's getting great polls on the economy, and he's bringing in $18 trillion, like he's personally dragging treasure chests onto the dock. But even the reporter fact-checks him, to his face basically saying, no, the economy polling isn't great and people don't feel what you're claiming. And here's the thing. Independent fact-checking has repeatedly found Trump's multi-trillion investment secured claims to be inflated, shifting, and not supported by the way he presents them. And while he's busy trying to sell the fantasy that everything is booming, he also starts bragging about a lawsuit where he's suing the IRS and Treasury for $10 billion over the leak of his tax information. Multiple mainstream outlets have reported on this lawsuit, including details that it follows the conviction of an IRS contractor for leaking taxpayer data. But in the interview, Trump goes further. He talks like he's already won, and he suggests he'd tell the government to pay him, even though he's the president and the government is supposed to be the people's government. When the reporter points out the obvious, "You're the bossin'," Trump tries to patch it with a classic Trump Band-Aid. "I'll give it to charity." He even tosses out American Cancer Society, as if saying a charity name magically makes it clean. And the reporter pushes again. "We have $30-something trillion in debt, and you're taking $10 billion out of the system." Trump hand-waves it like it's pocket change. This is what he does. Privatize the public turn institutions into vending machines, and then act offended when people notice. Then, because he can't help himself, he pivots into fraud claims pointing at Minnesota and shouting massive investigations, tossing out numbers like $19 billion in fraud, presenting himself as the one guy who could fix everything if only the country would stop asking questions about him. It's always the same script. When the spotlight hits his behavior, he points at somebody else and screams crime. And then this part is so surreal, it sounds like parody. But it's real enough that fact-checkers and doctors have had to respond. Trump starts bragging about taking aspirin all the time for decades, ignoring doctors, because he wants his blood nice and thin running through my heart. That's not how medical advice works, and public health experts have warned that his comments can confuse people about aspirin risks and benefits. But Trump doesn't care. He likes the sound of his own certainty. Now zoom out. The dominoes are falling from these Epstein document releases, and it's not just U.S. drama. Abroad, resignations and political crises are erupting. Reports say Slovakia's national security advisor resigned after disclosures tied to Epstein-related communications. In the UK, the Epstein-linked fallout has been scorching. Coverage describes how the Mandelson files rocked the government, with mounting pressure to release vetting documentation about Peter Mandelson's appointment and what officials knew. Parliamentary scrutiny intensified, and reporting describes a political storm around whether Mandelson misrepresented the extent of his relationship with Epstein during security vetting. And in the legal world, the shockwave hits big names too. AP reported that Brad Kopp, chairman of the powerhouse law firm Paul Weiss, resigned after emails revealed extensive communication with Epstein, adding to questions about influence networks and why certain institutions seemed eager to accommodate Trump. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., look at the contrast. When asked if Trump should answer under oath, MAGA leaders run. They stall. They deflect. They pretend press questions are the same as sworn testimony. And as Trump gets more desperate, the rhetoric around enforcement and elections gets darker. Steve Bannon goes on his show and says, "You're damn right we're going to have ICE surround the polls come November," framing it as preventing a stolen election. Multiple outlets reported the quote and the blowback, with even the White House press secretary refusing to clearly rule out ICE presence around polling places, which raises obvious intimidation fears. And speaking of ICE, did you see the Ace of Spades card story? Reports out of Colorado describe ICE agents leaving Ace of Spades cards widely associated with death cards and psychological warfare on vehicles connected to detained people, prompting lawmakers to raise serious questions and ICE to investigate. Now Trump also gets pressed on his history of amplifying conspiracy theories like the old Italian satellites nonsense about 2020, and he tries his usual word game escape hatch. I didn't tweet it. I retweeted it. I retruthed it. Same poison, different bottle. And then there's Tulsi Gabbard, reported to have overseen an investigation tied to yet another deranged voting machine conspiracy thread, with reporting noting the allegations were found unsubstantiated. It's a pattern. Flood the zone with conspiracies, exhaust everyone, then claim you're the victim of bad publicity. Even Melania gets dragged into the orbit of questions about Ghislaine Maxwell, and she shuts it down, saying she doesn't want to talk about it, trying to redirect attention in a moment that was supposed to be about celebrating freed hostages. That's the whole Trump world in one snapshot. Always redirect, always deflect, always not today, because today might become testimony. And while all this is happening, Trump is still running the oldest scam in his playbook, the fundraising bait and switch. Reports describe deceptive tariff rebate check emails sent under his name teasing money, asking supporters to confirm their name before he signs the check, then funneling them into donation pages. No rebate check, just a hook, a grift, again. So let me put it plainly, as anonymous, this is what instant karma looks like in politics. Trump tried to weaponize the Epstein files as a cudgel, and now the same files are a mirror. He tried to turn public scrutiny into a circus for everyone else. And now people are saying, find public testimony for all of it, live under oath. And suddenly the loudest man in the room can't give a straight answer. If you're watching this, don't just treat it like entertainment. Share it. Talk about it. Demand receipts. Demand sworn testimony. And don't let anyone sell you. Press questions as accountability. Now do your part. Hit subscribe. Push this out and keep your eyes on the next document drop. Because the bluff only works when nobody calls it. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive corruption dressed up as patriotism. And we do not forget the names written in those files. Expect us.